Joshua stood before the Philadelphia bench and announced that I would never lay a finger on his property empire. Next to him, Vanessa Ward sat with her legs crossed, murmuring under her breath that she deserved nothing at all. I gave nothing away, my face calm and unreadable. Right on cue, my lawyer Stephanie handed over a certified forensic audit as a last-minute supplemental exhibit. The judge cracked open the manila folder, scanned through the contents, and let out a sharp laugh. "Well, this is something," he muttered quietly. Joshua's legal team had no clue this folder was about to burn his entire empire to the ground. Smash that subscribe button so you don't miss a second of this financial reckoning. But before we get into the betrayal itself, think about how quickly people forget the ones who helped them rise. Have you ever felt like the invisible pillar propping up your own family? Drop a comment telling me your thoughts, where you're tuning in from, and what time it is wherever you are. I want to know who's here with us tonight. 19 years back, Joshua and I began with nothing but a single secondhand truck. No capital, no backers, no cushion to fall back on. All we had was my nonstop effort. I pulled brutal double shifts in clinical research, pouring every dollar I earned into his early property ventures. I was the quiet backbone funding our shared dream. I mapped out our future while grinding through back-to-back trials under harsh lab lighting, running on barely 4 hours of rest a night. My paycheck bought our first parcels of land. My credit backed the earliest construction loans. I was, in every practical sense, the one who built the base of what eventually became a sprawling, multi-million-dollar property empire. But as the fortune grew, what I got back emotionally kept shrinking. Joshua didn't change all at once. It was a slow, deliberate erosion of how much he valued me. Entitlement, once it takes root, eats away at a person's decency from the inside. That's the danger of getting used to cruelty. You stop noticing it. When you're the one holding up a narcissist's whole world, they quit seeing you as a person. You're no longer a partner who helped design the life you're living. You become background scenery. You're supposed to carry the weight of their swelling ego and disappear into the walls while they enjoy the view from the top. I turned into a function to him, a line item he stopped thinking twice about. He got so used to my sacrifices that they stopped registering as sacrifices at all. They became things he simply expected. While the business accounts grew fat, my place in his everyday life shrank to nothing. He dressed in tailored suits, bought with money my early labor had generated, while I stayed in scrubs, still anchoring our finances from the ground up. I watched the man I'd built an empire beside start treating me like something that loses value over time. I didn't break down over the distance growing between us. I didn't demand answers, I just watched. I took note of every shift in his routine, the late nights with no explanation, the sudden secrecy around his phone. I ran a clinical research department. My whole career revolved around data, variables, and patterns that don't lie. And the patterns in Joshua's behavior were impossible to miss. He figured he was pulling one over on a wife, too buried in work to notice his carelessness. What he didn't grasp was that he was leaving behind a mountain of evidence for someone trained specifically to catch irregularities. Our marriage had quietly turned into a lopsided deal, and I was the one covering the cost. All I needed to do was tally up at exactly how much. The evidence kept piling up fast after that. I started clocking behavioral shifts that didn't need any emotional reading, just cold logic. Joshua's phone, once left carelessly on the counter, was now glued to his hand and always locked. Unexplained blocks of time started showing up on our shared calendar. And worst of all, I found unauthorized transfers coming out of our joint trust accounts. Nothing added up anymore. Our finances were quietly hemorrhaging. Everything crystallized on one gray night after I dragged myself home from a brutal shift at the lab. On the drive back, I took a longer route to clear my mind, and that's when I noticed Joshua's car parked outside an upscale restaurant, a solid 40 minutes from where he claimed to be having a business dinner. I pulled over across the street. No panic, no rush. I stepped out into the cool night air and walked up to the restaurant's lit window. Looking in, the last piece fell into place. There sat Joshua, tucked into a private corner booth, holding Vanessa Ward's hand like it was nothing new. She was a real estate broker we'd worked with before, always looking for an angle. He ran his fingers over hers with an ease that told me this wasn't the first time. This was a slow, ongoing theft of everything I'd built. And there I stood, separated from my husband's betrayal by nothing but a pane of glass, forced to sit with it completely alone. I stood there on that sidewalk for a full 20 seconds without moving. I didn't bang on the glass. I didn't storm in demanding answers. People tend to mistake stillness for weakness. They assume silence means someone's frozen by shock or trapped in helpless submission. But those 20 seconds weren't a breakdown. They were me calculating my next move with total precision. I was absorbing the new shape of my life in real time. My anger wasn't loud this time. It was ice cold and exact. In that window of time, I understood that any outburst would only give Joshua room to twist the story, hide his money, and get his defenses ready. Making a scene right there would have been reckless. I rubbed my eyes, half expecting grief to hit, but all I felt was total clarity. I had quietly funded his version of a family for years, and now it was time to cash out. On the 21st second, I turned and walked away with quiet composure. I got in my car, started it, and drove off into the dark. Not a single tear fell the whole ride home. Instead, I started mentally drafting the legal and financial strategy I'd need to take his world apart. The marriage was already over in every way that mattered. This wasn't a relationship anymore, it was a hostile takeover, and I intended to be the one calling every shot. When I finally sat Joshua down with proof of his affair, his response was exactly what you'd expect from someone who saw people as transactions. Standing in the entryway of the house my early paychecks had paid for, he showed zero remorse. Instead, he tried to smooth talk his way out, coldly saying we both deserved a fresh start, like we were shutting down a failing business branch instead of ending 19 years of marriage built on my sacrifices. He figured he could label me a bad investment and walk away without consequences. He had no idea what was coming. Bracing for my response, Joshua and his expensive lawyers scrambled the next morning to file paperwork stripping our assets. They staged a fake bankruptcy, shuffling huge sums out of our shared accounts to make it look like we were broke. His plan was total financial devastation. He wanted me left with nothing after 2 decades of building security. What shocked them wasn't what they'd done, it was that I refused to play their game. I didn't waste breath pleading for a fair split. I packed up and left the house immediately, taking only my essential work files and personal items, leaving behind all the material excess we'd accumulated. I moved into a bare-rented loft overlooking the industrial stretch of the Schuylkill River. It was stripped down, exposed brick, bare bulbs, but it became my fortress, entirely mine to control. I hired Stephanie, the sharpest, most relentless divorce attorney in Philadelphia, known for never backing down in a fight. I didn't ask her to broker a gentle separation. I gave her a full digital paper trail and told her team to chase down one very specific discrepancy I'd already spotted before walking out, a missing $16.5 million from our joint accounts. Sitting in my loft, watching the river move below, I felt nothing but calm. Every emotional thread connecting me to Joshua snapped the moment he called our marriage a fresh start. Grief gave way instantly to cold, focused resolve. I approached his fake bankruptcy like a puzzle to be solved. He assumed his financial cover-up was airtight, forgetting that I was the one who'd helped design the entire system in the first place. I opened my laptop and began cross-referencing my own analytical tools with the financial records Stephanie's team was pulling through legal channels. Joshua thought his exit was clean. He had no idea he'd just handed his own downfall's blueprint to the person best equipped to read it. I was going to trace every cent of that $16.5 million, and I was going to use his own fraud against him. That stripped-down loft over the river quickly turned into a full-blown command center. Under those bare bulbs, Stephanie brought in reinforcements. William, a seasoned auditor who could follow $1 through the most tangled offshore accounts, and Isabella, a forensic analyst with a sharp eye for digital inconsistencies. We barely slept. We ran on bad coffee and worked with total precision, unraveling 19 years of Joshua's carefully hidden financial dealings. Thanks to William and Isabella's relentless digging, we cracked through the layers of his staged bankruptcy fast. The missing money wasn't one transaction, it was a coordinated, multi-step extraction. We found transfers moving in stages, $4.5 million, then $7 million, then $5 million more. The numbers didn't lie. Joshua had systematically drained the exact money I'd earned through years of exhausting double shifts. Isabella ran the account numbers through her forensic tools and exposed the hidden layers of Joshua's corporate setup. 2 shell companies kept surfacing on our screens, Summit Horizons and Stonebridge Solutions. Neither generated any real income. They existed purely to funnel stolen money. We traced the funds moving through Summit Horizons straight into Vanessa Ward's personal offshore accounts. Joshua had used my life's earnings to bankroll his mistress's future, but the money trail was only the setup. What sealed his fate was outright forgery. Isabella zoomed in on a digital authorization document tied to Stonebridge Solutions, and there it was, my own signature, badly copied. Joshua hadn't just taken my money. He'd stolen my identity to do it. Then William delivered the discovery that closed off any chance he had left. He laid out property records connected to Stonebridge Solutions right on my desk. That company secretly held the deed to my own clinical lab. Joshua wasn't just funneling cash to Vanessa, he was setting up a fraudulent transfer to cut me off from my career completely. He wanted to lock me out of the very lab that had generated the wealth he built his empire on, using forged paperwork to do it. I stared at that fake signature under the dim light, waiting for panic to hit, but there was only clarity. This wasn't a divorce case anymore. It was the unraveling of a full-blown criminal operation. He thought fake poverty would break me. Instead, I compiled every piece of evidence into one airtight file. He'd unknowingly given me everything I needed to take him down completely. The audit was finished. The trap was set. It was time to go back to court and finish this. Back in that Philadelphia courtroom, everything circled back to where it started. Joshua still wore that same arrogant smirk, fully convinced his staged bankruptcy had left me powerless. He stood there adjusting his expensive tie, confident his fabricated financial statements would protect his empire. He had no idea the folder Stephanie had just handed over held the raw, undeniable truth of his crimes. The judge's laughter stopped instantly. His expression turned hard and unforgiving as he opened the certified audit. The whole courtroom shifted in an instant. The judge didn't hold back. He read the flagged digital signatures, IP addresses, and exact timestamps straight into the record. Every transfer, every shell company, every forged document was exposed under the courtroom lights. The judge caught Joshua in a direct lie under oath. He compared the new evidence about the Stonebridge accounts to what Joshua had sworn moments earlier, that he'd lost all access to them. The judge read the routing numbers proving Joshua had been actively managing those very accounts just hours before walking into court. The room froze. Realizing the sheer scale of the fraud, the judge didn't just settle the asset dispute. He immediately froze every business entity tied to Joshua and referred the forgery charges straight to federal prosecutors. I watched Joshua clench his jaw so tight I thought his teeth might crack. His confidence vanished instantly, replaced by raw panic. Beside him, Vanessa Ward's face went pale. Her smugness collapsed into pure fear as her offshore account numbers were read aloud for the record. She realized, right alongside Joshua, that their scheme was completely finished. There's something almost fascinating about how power evaporates the moment the money runs out. We're taught to believe a narcissist's confidence comes from some deep inner strength. But really, it's all transactional. Their power exists only because their money buys compliance and props up the image. The second the funds are gone, exposed by cold, hard facts, that authority disappears completely. Without stolen money to hide behind, Joshua was just a frightened man caught in his own web of lies. The mood in the room shifted completely. Joshua's high-priced attorneys, sensing the legal danger, started physically distancing themselves from him at the table. They quietly packed up, putting space between themselves and a client who'd just destroyed his own credibility under oath. They weren't shocked by his crimes. They were shocked he'd been beaten at his own game. I sat perfectly still, spine straight, no smile, no gloating, just clean, methodical accounting. I had exposed his lies, stripped his power, and taken back what was mine through cold, undeniable proof. The tables had completely turned, and Joshua's empire was finished for good. The court ordered a full mandatory audit, freezing every asset he had left. The judge wasted no time sending a criminal fraud referral to the district attorney. Joshua's business reputation collapsed overnight as his partners fled, terrified of getting dragged into his fraud. The fallout led to a complete foreclosure on everything he had left. Vanessa Ward showed exactly how loyal she really was. She disappeared the moment his money dried up, gone before the indictments were even filed. Now, at 51, I stand at the window of my quiet loft watching autumn leaves drift down over the still water below. The fight is over. I've found real peace. The final chapter is closed, and the boundaries I fought for gave me freedom that can't be taken away. Looking back at everything, I've realized that lies take constant work to maintain, but the truth just waits patiently in bank records and timestamps for someone willing to dig it up. What I really gained wasn't the money or the property. It was the dignity I fought hard to get back. Living through that takeover changed me completely. I closed that chapter for good, and the peace I feel now is the sweetest kind of justice there is. If this story reminded you that facts always outlast lies, and that your dignity is always worth fighting for, hit subscribe right now. Tell me in the comments why you think the truth always comes out, and share this story with someone who needs the strength to write their own comeback. Until next time, protect your peace.